One moment on the court, and Chennedy Carter's future in the WNBA might have been shattered forever. The shocking shove that sent ripples through the basketball world left fans reeling. And now, Carter's explanation could just make things worse for her career. Let's dive into what really happened and why it might be too late to fix it. The stage was set, fans packed into the arena, the buzz was palpable, and both teams, Indiana Fever and Chicago Sky, were ready to go head-to-head in one of the most anticipated matchups of the season. From the tip-off, the energy was high. Every pass, every play was amplified by the crowd's excitement, but it was a moment that no one could have predicted that would steal the spotlight and dominate the headlines. In the middle of the game, during a lull in play, with the ball no longer in motion, Chennedy Carter approached Caitlin Clark. It wasn't a part of any game strategy or play. It wasn't a case of competitive spirit pushing one player to outdo the other. No, what happened was something far more intense. A deliberate, unprovoked shove to Clark that shocked everyone. It was swift, violent, and totally unexpected. In an instant, the game wasn't about basketball anymore. It was about something far darker. The shove wasn't just a bump or a brief confrontation. It was an aggressive physical altercation, one that had no place on the court, especially during a break in play. What followed was a whirlwind of reactions from fans, players, analysts, and the media. Some were outraged, some were confused, and some even tried to justify the action as a part of the game. But no one could deny that it had been a dangerous and ill-advised moment. Chennedy Carter had crossed a line that many believed should never be crossed, especially in women's basketball, where respect, professionalism, and the fight for legitimacy are constant struggles. This wasn't just an unfortunate incident that would quickly be forgotten. No, this was a moment that would follow Carter and the WNBA for years to come. A moment that would define how she was perceived and ultimately shape her future in the league. As the shockwaves from the incident reverberated through the basketball world, fans and analysts alike waited for Carter to speak out and take responsibility. What was going on in her mind? Was it an accident? Or was there something more to it? What would she say to explain her actions? When Carter finally spoke out in an interview, her words were far from what anyone expected. Instead of acknowledging the severity of the incident, she brushed it off casually. Carter claimed it was just a little tap, something she insisted was part of the competitive nature of the game. "It's just a nice little tap," she said, claiming that it wasn't intended to harm anyone, but rather was just part of the heat of the moment. This explanation didn't sit well with many who had witnessed the incident unfold. The footage was undeniable. The cameras had caught every detail. What Carter described as a little tap was in fact a hard, aggressive shove that caught Clark completely off guard. The ball wasn't even in play, and there was no basketball-related reason for Carter to approach Clark. The push wasn't a spontaneous reaction. It was a deliberate, premeditated act. Carter's attempt to minimize the incident only raised more questions. How could she not see the severity of her actions? How could she explain away what was clearly a violation of sportsmanship as nothing more than a little tap? Her version of events didn't match what millions of fans had witnessed on the court. What was meant to be an apology, or at least some acknowledgement, turned into an even more significant controversy. But this wasn't just a case of miscommunication or a simple misunderstanding. Carter's response to the incident, or lack thereof, showed something much deeper. An unwillingness to take responsibility for her actions. It painted a picture of someone who wasn't ready to admit when they were wrong, someone who refused to recognize that their actions could have consequences beyond the court. The aftermath of the incident was swift and unforgiving. Carter had just damaged her reputation and the trust that many fans and executives had placed in her. What followed wasn't just public outrage. It was a real, very serious consequence. No team wanted to take a chance on her. In the WNBA, where team chemistry and personal conduct are paramount, Carter's actions painted her in a negative light. Teams weren't just looking at her stats or her talent on the court. They were looking at the bigger picture. What kind of teammate was she? Could they trust her to be professional, to work as part of a team, and to represent the league in a positive light? The answer, for many teams, was no. And this wasn't a minor issue that would blow over with time. This was a moment that defined Chennedy Carter as someone who didn't have control over her emotions, who couldn't be trusted to stay professional in difficult moments. Teams want players who can handle the pressure, who know how to behave when the cameras are off. Carter's refusal to acknowledge her mistake made it clear to team executives that she was more focused on justifying her actions than on learning from them. In a professional league like the WNBA, where image and professionalism go hand in hand with talent, there was no way around it. Carter had become a liability, and as a result, no team signed her. Not even the expansion team, the Valkyries, who were struggling to fill their roster with talent, wanted to bring her in. That's a powerful statement. When a team that could have used a player like Carter still decides not to take her on, it's a clear message that her actions had consequences. Serious consequences. So why did Chennedy Carter downplay the situation the way she did? Why would someone who had crossed such a major line try to minimize their actions as just a little tap? Her attempt to justify the shove wasn't just a defense of herself. It was an attempt to downplay something that everyone had seen for what it truly was: an unprovoked act of aggression. Carter's explanation also shed light on a more troubling aspect of her character: her inability to accept responsibility. Instead of acknowledging that her shove crossed a line and recognizing the negative impact it had on the game, the league, and her own career, she insisted that it was nothing more than a typical part of basketball. "It happens in basketball," she said, as if to suggest that such behavior was just part of the game. But the reality is, there's a major difference between physical plays that are part of the action and confrontations that happen during a dead ball, away from the game's flow. The footage was clear. Carter wasn't playing basketball in that moment. She wasn't engaged in a competitive play. She wasn't even in the middle of a heated exchange during active play. No, what she did was an act of aggression, plain and simple. She walked up to Clark, insulted her, and shoved her out of the blue. This wasn't competitive spirit. This was something personal, something that Carter, by trying to downplay it, refused to acknowledge. And that's where things really started to go wrong. Her refusal to admit that she had gone too far made the entire situation even worse. The WNBA isn't just about raw talent. It's about knowing when to rein it in, knowing when to show restraint. It's about understanding that certain behaviors have consequences. Carter's insistence that it was just part of the game made it clear that she didn't understand that. And if she didn't understand that, how could she possibly expect anyone to trust her to learn from this incident and move forward? Carter's story doesn't end on the basketball court. In today's world, where athletes are as much public figures as they are competitors, their actions off the court can be just as telling as their performance during the game. Social media has become a platform where stars can engage with fans, promote brands, and sometimes vent their frustrations. Chennedy Carter, unfortunately, chose to use her social media presence in a way that added fuel to the fire, rather than calming things down. After ESPN ranked her 25th among the top players in the league, Carter's reaction was far from professional. Most athletes would take such a ranking as motivation to prove the critics wrong, to work even harder and show the world that they deserve a higher spot. But Carter didn't do that. Instead, she used the platform to publicly vent her frustrations. She posted a series of tweets and comments expressing how upset she was about her ranking. She framed the ranking as a disrespectful jab at her talent, showing the world how deeply it bothered her. But that wasn't the end of it. The real damage came when Carter responded to another post that suggested she was carrying her team and helping them secure victories. In a professional sports environment, athletes know that promoting individual achievement over team success is a dangerous move. Basketball is the ultimate team sport, and one player can't win a game alone. Yet, Carter liked the tweet and allowed it to remain in the public eye. She didn't just focus on team dynamics. She centered the conversation around herself, further distancing herself from the importance of being a team player. Imagine the message this sent to her teammates. It was as if she was suggesting that they weren't pulling their weight, that she was the only reason the team had a shot at success. For anyone who's played on a team, this is a direct violation of trust. It's one thing to have a quiet, internal competition with teammates, but to openly show your dissatisfaction with the team's performance in such a public manner is toxic. What followed were questions from other players, fans, and team executives about her commitment to the team. Was Chennedy Carter more interested in proving her personal worth than helping the team win? Was she the kind of player who would cause internal strife just to get some recognition? The damage caused by her social media behavior was just as significant as the physical shove she delivered. In fact, many insiders argue that her online actions might have been even more damaging. When you're a professional athlete in the public eye, every tweet, every post, every comment is a reflection of your character. And Carter's actions on social media were a clear indication of someone who lacked the emotional maturity to understand the weight of their words. It wasn't just a moment of frustration, it was a glimpse into her mindset. A player who wanted to stand out, not for her team accomplishments, but for her own individual success. That's not the kind of mentality that builds championship teams, and that's why executives were hesitant to bring her into their fold. While Carter's public persona was starting to cause issues, it wasn't just her online behavior that was putting a strain on her career. It was her actions behind closed doors. The locker room, as every professional athlete knows, is sacred ground. It's where bonds are built, where the foundation of team spirit is formed, and where athletes are expected to set aside personal differences for the greater good of the team. But for Carter, the locker room became a battleground where tensions ran high. There were reports of conflicts between Carter and her teammates that extended beyond the basketball court. One of the most notable incidents was her confrontation with teammate Camila Cardoso. The altercation got so intense that it had to be broken up by others. In any professional setting, disagreements are bound to happen. But the fact that this confrontation escalated to such a degree, and with so many people witnessing it, spoke volumes about Carter's inability to control her emotions in high-pressure situations. In a team environment, how a player behaves off the court is just as important as their on-court performance. Players are expected to be leaders, to set the tone in the locker room, and to contribute to the team's overall cohesion. Carter, however, was doing the opposite. Instead of helping to build a positive, supportive environment, she was causing rifts and dividing the team. She was setting herself apart as someone who didn't play well with others, someone who allowed personal grievances to affect her interactions with teammates. This is something that team executives pay close attention to when making roster decisions. But it wasn't just one isolated incident. There were others, and the pattern was becoming clear. Whether it was her lack of accountability for the Caitlin Clark incident, or her inability to handle a minor disagreement in the locker room, Carter was showing the world that she couldn't be relied upon to be a professional in high-stress environments. A professional athlete needs to be able to navigate the ups and downs of competition without letting personal issues spill over into their professional life. Carter, however, was allowing her personal frustrations to affect her interactions with teammates, and it was damaging her relationships with the people she needed the most. Carter's issues weren't just about one bad play or one explosive incident. They were a symptom of a larger problem that extended to how she viewed her role in the league, her team, and the broader sports culture. The WNBA, like every other professional league, is in the process of establishing itself as a legitimate and respected force in the sports world. The league is growing, with more fans tuning in, more sponsors showing interest, and more attention being paid to the women's game than ever before. But with that growth comes a heightened responsibility for players to act as ambassadors for the league. Players like Caitlin Clark, Sabrina Ionescu, and Aja Wilson have become the faces of the WNBA, using their platforms to advocate for social change, raise awareness for important issues, and demonstrate leadership on and off the court. These players are working tirelessly to ensure that the league doesn't just survive, they want it to thrive, and they understand the importance of maintaining professionalism, both in the locker room and in the public eye. Chennedy Carter, unfortunately, missed the memo. Her actions both on and off the court were a direct contradiction to the image the league was trying to build. When she shoved Clark, it wasn't just a poor decision for the moment. It was a reflection of a larger issue. The WNBA is fighting for respect, and every player who behaves unprofessionally puts that fight in jeopardy. Carter's inability to recognize the gravity of her actions showed that she wasn't ready to be the kind of player who could help the league continue its upward trajectory. Let's get one thing straight. Chennedy Carter is a gifted player. No one can deny her talent. She's a force to be reckoned with on the court, capable of scoring at will and making plays that leave fans in awe. But as every professional athlete knows, talent alone is not enough to secure a long-term career in sports. In the WNBA, just like in every other professional league, a player's reputation matters just as much as their skills. And Carter's reputation has taken a serious hit. While her talent might have once been the thing that teams were excited about, her behavior off the court became the thing that made executives hesitant. Talent alone isn't enough to get you through an entire season, especially in a league as competitive as the WNBA. Teams are looking for players who can be reliable, who can maintain professionalism under pressure, and who can contribute to the team's success, both on and off the court. Carter's inability to control her emotions, her tendency to lash out in public, and her disregard for the well-being of her team made her a liability. So, what does this all mean for her future? Talent might get you in the door, but behavior keeps you there. And right now, Carter's behavior is keeping her from a chance at success. Teams are looking for players who can be leaders, who can represent the league with dignity, and who can inspire others to follow their example. Chennedy Carter's talent might have earned her a place on the court, but her actions off it have earned her a reputation that teams are unwilling to take a chance on. And now, the most shocking part of all this, Chennedy Carter actually says she loves the hate. In a recent interview, she admitted that she feeds off negative attention. It's as if she thrives on controversy. But in a professional setting, that kind of mindset can be dangerous. In basketball, as in life, how you handle criticism and adversity ultimately defines your future. Will Chennedy Carter realize that her behavior is costing her the chance to truly succeed? Or will she continue to let controversy define her career?